Hey there, Elise Jensine here, and today I'm drawing some mermaids. It is MerMay! And so I've pulled up some drawings that I did actually a while ago, and I'm making them into bookmarks. And so today I'm doing some coloring for them. Here I'm testing out the colors on this paper because it's like a slightly off-white, so I want to make sure I know how it'll look. And I'm doing some thumbnails to figure out how I want to do the colors, and I decided I like the open backgrounds so I can do shading on them. And so let's dive in. Here I'm making sure to color in sections so that it will just naturally blend together. And then I'm also whipping out a handy dandy colorless blender to do the ends of the hair so that it makes a nice little transition. I'm going to keep at it. I'm mostly following the wave pattern of the hair in each of these. This is probably my favorite one for the hair, at least. Just great flow. And then this one, well, I guess second favorite. This one's second favorite because it's just a lot going on. And there's a lot of different sections that I broke this into. And then later on, I'm going to re-emphasize some of the flow with drawing over top again. And let's not forget the guys. For some reason, probably because I don't do it as much, but getting the flow with the guy's hair was a lot more challenging. Just trying to get flow in such a small area. So let's do the fins. And these took several passes, but you can see me just throwing down that colorless blender first, almost like treating it like a watercolor, hoping that if I put the colorless blender first, the solid colors will transition into that. So you see me do that in a lot of these areas. And then I'm trying to create like that scaly look by just tapping the marker onto the paper right after I did layers so that it kind of blends out. And then I liked how even when the colorless blender dries, you can see it in the bottom of the hair there. There's a bit of a coloration still on the paper, so I used that for some of the shadows, for just faint shadows. And then you saw me use the colorless blender a little bit there for the scales too. For the same reason, when I did a test, the colorless blender over top of a solid color almost pulled it up a little bit. So I used it as a second way of creating some variation in the tails. Or in the scales. Creating that ombre, doing it everywhere. All right, and here's how they're coming. Next, I'm gonna just finesse these variations or gradients. I think it really helps to do a second layer. And then I also slap down that colorless blender again before doing more of the tabs for the scales, so that they would kind of bleed out in certain areas. Then you saw how I just did that at the top near the waist, so it would fade out there, but then down lower into the tail it would stay more as little spots instead of fading out. And then I used it on his tail to fade it in the in-between regions. So it was kind of like the scales were only showing when light is catching them. Now I'm whipping out a Prismacolor markers to do the lighter tails, because I just didn't have one in the Chameleon pens. And these are a little trickier because I just have the chisel tip ones. So you see me turning my hand, really angling them, and I'm mostly just using the very tip. But it worked out pretty nicely. Now I'm doing some of the clothes and accessories. And now I'm diving into the skin. And it starts off this really dark color, but it dries much lighter. And so you can already start to see it in that first one that I did compared to the ones I'm doing now. And that's also why you test them. And see, now you see that they've mellowed out quite a bit. And now I'm going back over top with a color that dries a little bit pinkier. And I'm doing the shadow shapes with that. And then I also take that colorless blender and hit the edges in places that I want to make sure it bleeds out a bit, so it'll blend. Now I'm jumping in with just graphite and hitting those backgrounds, just like on my thumbnails. And now I'm choosing where I want to create a gradient, where I want it to be darker, you know, push back those areas and then leave some areas lighter. And so I'm just creating gradients in the backgrounds for each of these. And now I'm also going to go back into that hair, draw some lines over top and get that movement back, because those markers over top loses a little bit of those lines. And then it also just creates a little bit of a darker touch to it. I didn't use black or like a pen to outline anything on these because I wanted them all to be pretty soft. And so I'm just going to go back in with that pencil. You see all the layers that I do to create those gradients. And for this one, I took some of that onto the skin too. And I just keep knocking them back until they look right to me. And there we go. So now I'm going to start doing some pens over top, some metallic pens. So I'm giving them a test over on the side, that margin again over top of the markers there, just to see how they look. And I'm trying both that silver and the gold. At first I thought I was going to use both, but on this paper you can see just that silver really shines. The gold didn't. So we're just going to do that silver. And so I decided to use it for highlights. And so I'm putting it into the scales because I love that if you turn the paper, it might be the darkest color, it might be the lightest color. So I put it on their jewelry, on the scales, and then a little bit on the edges of her shells, just so it would catch the light there. Alright, and now I'm doing some finishing touches. Just doing a little extra shade in there, little facial features here, and getting that flow for the hair. And that's about it. So now I'm gonna cut them out because these are bookmarks, and get those nice clean edges since I overdrew everything from the boundaries that I set. And comment down below, which is your favorite? I'm thinking the one with the brown hair and the lighter tail is mine. It's going to be the second from the end when I lay these out. Let me know what you like. And as always, thanks for watching. And until next time, bye-bye.